As I pulled up to the factory gates, the eerie stillness of the night settled around me like a heavy blanket. Only the heavy rainfall could be heard or seen moving anywhere within a half-mile radius. I glanced at the clock on the dashboard, 9:47 p.m. I had made it on time. This was my first night shift as a security guard, and already a chill crept up my spine. The sprawling complex loomed ahead, a hulking silhouette against the moonlit sky. Its once industrious life had faded into a dark reminder of its past. This factory was once illustrious and bustling with life, but over the past decade, it had fallen into hard times like a lot of places had. The owners made the mistake of cutting corners and reducing staff to try to push profits even higher. It started well, but then just resulted in a drop in quality, performance, and lost contracts, not to mention several major accidents. This led to the owners deciding to cut their losses and sell up what machinery and land they had left. Their decision caused uproar in the local community, as it meant that many in the town had lost their jobs, and with fears that it would also have a knock-on effect and destroy the town commercially. The owners assumed this was why they had started having problems at night. Suspected break-ins and vandalism ranging from graffiti to broken windows, and in some cases, machinery had been found to be running in the morning, despite being locked off the night before. The company had lured me in with promises of steady pay, easy 8-hour shifts, and minimum trouble, assuming I would just be a scarecrow, there to ward off kids who want to break in and cause damage. They needed their machines to be kept in the best condition possible so they could be sold on. Babysitting these inanimate objects would definitely be a welcome break from my last job working in retail stores. Dealing with shoplifters, disgruntled shoppers, and unruly teenagers on a constant basis had taken its toll, and I needed a break. Standing at the entrance, I clutched my flashlight like a sword, my heart thundering in my chest. The factory was infamous in town for its history, a place where strange accidents happened, and whispers of lingering spirits were part of local lore. I shook my head, dispelling the absurd thoughts, and stepped through the imposing metal gates, locking them again behind me. Once inside, the interior was even more foreboding than I'd envisioned. My boots echoed against the concrete floor, the sound bouncing off the walls causing a delay, like footsteps following my own steps. The faint smell of rust and oil filled the air, a remnant of the years gone by. I clicked on my flashlight, illuminating the vast emptiness around me. Machinery sat dormant, casting long shadows that danced in the beams of moonlight, light shining through the skylight windows. It was silent, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone, as if I was being watched. I found the security office, a small room flanked with monitors showing the various sections of the factory. I settled in, trying to shake off any lingering unease. The owners had left me with a map of the factory, with all entrances and security camera positions marked so I would know where to go if I seen anything. I stared blankly at the screens, their flickering images unnerving yet strangely hypnotic. Not much happened for the first part of the night. My mind kept drifting away into boredom-induced daydreams. But every now and then I would get a startle, thinking I noticed a movement in a shadow on one of the monitors. But then nothing would follow. So I just put it down to my mind playing tricks on me, or maybe a small animal seeking shelter from the rain. Midnight struck, the clock on the wall chiming ominously. The sound ricocheted through the silence, breaking the spell of stillness that had settled in. I decided to distract myself by doing my first walk about around the factory floor, checking the cameras were working and doors were locked. Repeatedly, I found myself just gazing into the shadows, half expecting something to emerge. At first, it was just an odd flicker of movement, a shadow flitting just out of the corner of my eye. But when I turned my head, the shadow disappeared into the corners of the room, leaving me staring at the compelling darkness. I continued to convince myself it was only my imagination playing tricks on me, exacerbated by the exhaustion that hung like a weight on my eyelids. I rubbed the fatigue from my eyes and continued my patrol. As I arrived in the next section, I started hearing the soft hum of machinery running over the top of the sound of the rain, thumping against the roof. I followed the sound instinctively, each of my steps like an echo in an empty cathedral. Then I heard a scream and a yell for help. I started to sprint down the corridor of machinery towards the noise. It led me to the assembly line where pristine conveyor belts were running and transporting a number of what looked like heavy machine parts. I had found the screaming. It was man, unwillingly riding along the conveyor with his leg trapped under a particularly heavy-looking piece of equipment. He was begging for help, and for me to stop the conveyor before he reached the large packing machine that was pounding away at the end of the conveyor. I leapt at the red emergency stop button, but as soon as I pushed it, the vision vanished. I was left standing on a silent assembly line alone. A dormant, empty conveyor belt lay in front of me with long unused packing machine at its end, both covered in rust and a layer of dust. My heart pounded as I shined my flashlight across the dusty surfaces. Nothing seemed amiss except for the rapidly increasing feeling of dread wrapped around my chest. Had I drifted off into one of my daydreams? This felt too real. Suddenly, a loud clank resonated through the factory. I spun around, illuminating the surrounding shadows, but found only emptiness. "Get it together, man," I muttered to myself, trying to shake off the pang of fear. But deep down, I felt the air grow heavier, thick with an unseen presence. I retreated to the security office, hoping the constant barrage of surveillance would keep my mind busy. I leaned back in my chair, staring blankly at the monitors. That's when I caught something in the corner of one of the feeds. A fleeting, shadowy figure by the loading docks, but inside. My stomach dropped. I leaned closer, my hands trembling slightly as I adjusted the angle. I was still shaken by that vision on the assembly line. As I squinted at figure on the screen, I could have sworn I saw its face. A hollow-eyed visage, a mask of sorrow that sent a shiver through my spine. Before I could react, the figure vanished, seemingly drifting into the shadows. I rubbed my eyes, trying to chase away the fatigue that had begun to set in. Maybe I'm dreaming, I thought, trying to brush off the chilling image. But the sense of wrongness only intensified instead of dissipating. I decided there was nothing like a heavy dose of caffeine to chase away my jitters. I made my way towards the break room, praying there was a coffee machine that actually worked. As I walked, the factory felt impossibly large. Each section felt like caverns of darkness yawning beside me as I walked past. The echo of my footsteps grew in cacophony, as if the factory were alive with people walking right behind me. I fought every urge to turn around and check. Once in the break room, I filled the coffee machine and then topped up a cup to the brim before taking a sip, welcoming its warmth. That's when I heard it again. A hum of machinery, but this time clearer, and it seemed to be coming from beyond the break room's door. My curiosity piqued. I abandoned my coffee and slipped out cautiously. The sound led me through to the furnace room, where the air was thick with something I couldn't place. As I approached, the noise intensified, and there was a flickering orange glow coming from within the furnace itself. The furnace suddenly burst into life, like somebody had turned up the pressure of the flames, so they were now roaring, and the room was rapidly increasing in temperature. I heard sounds of movement coming from behind the furnace itself. "Who's there?" I called, my voice shaky and uncertain. The movement abruptly stopped. I slowly made my way over, straining to hear any noises outside of the sound of the roaring flames. Then, out of nowhere, the flame was gone, plunging me into darkness. I swung my flashlight around, heart racing, searching for what was going on. But the light had gone out. It was as if the night itself had blanketed the room, swallowing everything into a void. Just as panic began to swell inside me, the light on my torch returned, blinking erratically like a faulty bulb. In the sudden burst of illumination, I froze. A figure stood at the entrance to the room, its face illuminated by the flickering lights. It was the same hollow-eyed specter I'd seen on the monitor, and it was closer now. So close I could see the anguish carved into its features. "What do you want?" I demanded, my voice a hoarse whisper. It merely tilted its head, the sorrowful expression deepening before it pointed toward the furnace. As I turned my head to look, the shadow rushed towards me. In that moment, a flood of visions rushed through my mind. Flashes of an accident, a figure trapped inside the furnace, desperation painted on their face, and the deafening sound of flames roaring. I stumbled backward, grappling with the horror of what had transpired in this forsaken place. The figure had dissolved into the shadows, leaving me breathless and shaken. The flames had gone, and the factory was silent again. I scrambled away, the adrenaline amplifying my sense of flight. I knew then that I had to leave. This factory held too much horror, too many secrets best left undisturbed. As I fled to the exit, the echoes of my footsteps seemed to chase me away. I fumbled with my keys, feeling as if my inevitable doom was getting ever closer, but refusing to look behind me. I finally managed to open the lock and burst through the gates into the cold night air, gasping for breath as I stumbled away, vowing never to return. The factory loomed behind me like a blackened memory behind a curtain of heavy rain, forever haunted by shadows and whispers, an unwelcoming edifice of darkness I would never forget. I never agreed to a night shift again.
So we've closed the jar again. Join us next time and subscribe for more, if you dare.